picture I took of all of you.
All right, everybody, let's get started. Welcome to Surviving the Walking Dead, Understanding Behavior in a World Without Rules, with special guest Michael Cudlitz, Abraham Ford. All right, we want to start out with a shout out to some friends out here. Larry Deutschman and Sefro Orlando are here from Entertainment Industries Council. This is EIC, a nonprofit group founded in 1983. They use the power of entertainment industry to communicate about health and social issues. They have established the PRISM Awards, that is an award recognizing accurate portrayals of mental health and substance abuse issues, and they have been a good friend of ours, so we're happy to have them here today. We also want to introduce us. My name is Dr. Eric Bender, and Dr. Praveen Kalmbam is at the end. We are two of the three forensic psychiatrists that are part of Broadcast Thought. That's a creative collective group of psychiatrists, and we're subject matter experts and consultants, and our goal is to really shift the paradigm of how mental health is portrayed in the media. So we've done a lot of work with the official Walking Dead magazine and some other outlets too, so we're happy to be here, and we're really honored today to be joined by Michael. Dr. Cudlitz is a critically acclaimed actor who actually won a PRISM Award and currently portrays Abraham Ford on AMC's Walking Dead. He's been in multiple films, television shows, including 24, Lost, Prison Break, Band of Brothers, and won a Critics' Choice Television Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Drama Series for his work as Officer John Cooper in Southland. He voiced characters in numerous video games as well, and we want to thank him for being here, and thank AMC for making this possible as well. So, there is a lot to worry about in the world of The Walking Dead. You've got to worry about people eating you. You've got to worry about humans eating you. You've got to worry about fire. Children armed and very dangerous. You've got to worry about losing your head. Losing your backpacks as well. But to quote Abraham Ford, what we see here is a vast ocean of shit. We won't have time to go over every grain of said shit, but
every fine grain of said shit.
Thank you. So what we do want to talk about today, we want to bring up a couple topics, analyze some behaviors, get things started, a discussion, eventually get the Q&A as quick as we possibly can, and talk about leadership and what influences the leaders in this show, kind of how things happen, how things work. And we want to get Michael's opinion on this as one of the characters here. So let's get this discussion started, first by showing some scenes of his character, Abraham. One more to get things started.
Obviously, Abraham is the lighthearted comedian of the group. What specifically do you want to start with?
I think maybe your your background and how that's affected you, first of all, the background of the character.
Okay, with Abraham, it's interesting. Showed a lot of stuff.
So
Let's start back with when I first meet Eugene. Basically, the clips that you saw was almost everything coming full circle. He has lost everything through his own actions. He has absolutely nothing left to live for. At that moment, he is about to take his life, and Eugene comes in with a new mission. Something that makes it so that Abraham no longer has to think about his loss. He is no longer self-aware of his loss. He has something else outside of him to focus on. The problem is that, we'll get to this later, but we find out that he is lying and has been lying to him for 2 years. So it nullifies everything that he has done in his mission. But what it has done is it has given him time away from the event of losing everyone to think about life in a different way. There are things still worth living for. There are still things worth fighting for, worth dying for, that are outside of himself. So he's very aware at this point that Eugene has not only led him on this wild goose chase for 2 years, but he has also ultimately saved his life. So he's trying to reconcile all that shit. Yeah, it says on here, there's people who are not 18. So, shit at home. If you're watching the show, you're fine. The problem is now that they're in Alexandria, and the big mission, the sort of forward action of the mission has stopped. Alexandria affords a lot of things, a lot of comfort, a lot of time to think. And that is the last thing that Abraham needs right now, is time to think about anything other than something that's pulling him forward. And on the construction mission, this is the first time he's been out to get supplies. He knows it's going to go wrong. He knows they're going to encounter walkers. He knows that my phone is going to ring. Should we answer it and see who it is?
Yes.
No, we'll do that today. And it does. Everything goes sideways. Everything that he is afraid is going to happen, happens. The biggest thing that he's afraid of, though, is that this is who he is. This is what he was built to do. This is what he is good at. And the thing that he's good at and he was built to do and defines him is the same thing that lost his family. So, what do you do?
How has the family loss affected him? I mean, we saw it clearly has, but can you talk a little bit more about that in particular?
So far as how it's affected him, or
yeah, I guess does it motivate him in any way? Is it influencing him now? You talked about kind of.
Well, I think that what he wants to. People have always asked. A question that keeps coming up is how would you like your character to die? That's a very common question we get asked. No, it's like if you had to write your own death. I mean, it's kind of a cool exercise to go through, even if just if you're not on a TV show. How do you want to go out? How do you want to be remembered? And I always say that I hope that Abraham has a death that would fit his life and celebrate his life. And then I also tag on, I hope that he would go out doing something selfless to help sort of bridge the gap from what he did and what he feels he did to his family. Something that would help correct that. I think that he feels completely responsible for terrifying them the way he did. He never intended for his family to see him at work, because the work that he does is not the kind of work that you bring your kids to.
Well, we've heard about Abraham. We know about Abraham responding to stress. There are typical normal stress reactions that people can have. If you've faced a traumatic event, someone dying, yourself in danger, you can have different reactions to that that can be normal. It's when these reactions get extreme that you think about things like a post-traumatic stress disorder, in this case, as you said earlier, everybody has had some trauma. Everybody's had, and it's still going on. So
yeah, it's not post. It's going on.
Yeah,
Walking Dead.
it's ongoing. So let's take a look and see how another character responds to this kind of trauma.
Do you see who I am? People wearing dead people's faces walking. Listen, I don't know you. You do know me. I don't know. You know me. I don't know anyone anymore. You go clear. You know me. You crazy son of a bitch. Please kill me.
What do you think about Morgan here? Ramin and Mike?
Well, the thing that pops out to me is this a stress thing like before, or is it something bigger? That's what I would think about. That was our discussion before. So
I see a man who's lost everything, who's put himself in the exact same position that Abraham Ford was, except he doesn't have the balls to do it himself. He needs someone else to end his life. But that is an answer to all of this that keeps coming up. So far as how people are going to cope within this world, it keeps coming up, but not that many people can really follow through with it, because there are whatever it is inside of us that makes us want to keep moving forward. These real doctors can probably tell you why that is. I just make shit up.
So actually, if we were looking at it in the real world, we would be thinking about, okay, yeah, the guy's got booby traps everywhere, he's on guard, just like Abraham is, but it's a little bit farther, right? He's got writing on the wall that doesn't make any sense. When Rick says, you know me, we're friends for so long, he's like, well, people wear, the dead's faces all the time, because that's what happens, I guess. So in real life, that could be something that looks like delusional, meaning that you believe something that isn't really true, and you have disorganized behavior, the writing on the wall that doesn't make any sense, and he's kind of lost it. So in real life, we'd call that psychosis, which is basically losing touch with reality.
In our world, though, it's in a way it's not, because
In the Walking Dead world.
because you walk in and you're walking through your neighborhood and you're seeing your neighbors, people that you've lived with your entire life in that neighborhood, their friends, family, and they are people who you should know, who you should have a certain reaction to and relationship with, but they're dead and they're trying to kill you. So the dead people are wearing their faces, and they are not who they say. They look like people, but they are not. So you cannot trust what somebody looks like. And he has gotten himself into a situation where he's lost everybody and everything he loves as well. So once again, you cannot trust, and the people he's tried to trust, who he thought he knew, were dead, and we're trying to harm him, and he had to ultimately kill, as we know how the only way to do. It's like thinking about killing all of your family members by some sort of blow to the head, or leaving them. It's the whole world that Kirkman has created is just a fantastic study of human nature.
Yeah, there's no rules. Yeah, the things we're talking about are assuming in our world, how do we look at it? But what happens here, who knows? Anything's game.
Yeah. Speaking of anything being game, talking on the phone, is Rick psychotic? Do you think that Rick is psychotic? And I would argue no. Even though he's talking on the phone to a dead person, this is something we'd expect. You lose somebody, you think about that person. You might hear hallucinations or experience hallucinations thinking somebody's talking to you, thinking that they're calling on the phone, calling you in the middle of the night, but that's expected. His grief is around that issue, I would say. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, think of somebody, we've all lost somebody close to us. We have moments when we're alone in our car before we go to bed. You talk to them, whether you say it verbally out loud, or you're talking in your head, or you say, I wonder what they would tell me to do at this point, and you kind of go, well, they would probably say, and in a sense, they're talking to you. This is all, I think, just a manifestation of what we all go through anyway. Now, we don't walk around with a phone talking to our dead wife, but
you might keep reminders, You might keep the ring or a picture.
yeah, he's still wearing his ring.
How many people think that these folks surely have to be psychotic, right? Let's see, show of hands. How many people think? What do you think, Eric?
I don't know. Cannibalism, we do see cannibalism. It does come up in certain situations, but it comes up most rarely in psychotic situations. It's very rare to come up in that kind of picture. It actually comes up more frequently, out of necessity or survival. Extreme criminal sexual behavior, sometimes in serial killers that we deal with, they have it as a ritual in their killing, or even in cultural rituals like Papua New Guinea, north of Australia, certain indigenous people. In this case, it doesn't seem to be delusional to me. I think
he set up yeah, exactly. I don't know if I'm going back. We had a sidebar conversation that we're not going to talk about. I think every group that we encounter, if you were to look at it through their eyes and really step back and work through the process of how they got to where they're at, there's a pretty logical progression in all of them. And I've said this before, but if our group was to come across our group right now, we'd kill every last one of them. Because we're, from the outside looking in, we're lunatics. You look at our behavior, you look at what we do, you look at there's nobody we trust that is not us at this point. And we've been trained to do that in the sense of everybody we've come across has been untrustworthy. But we kind of have our way of doing things, and every group has their way of doing things. And they didn't, they were either eat or be eaten, and it was a survival thing at first. But then you realize, well, what do? Do you sort of wait till all the food runs out, and then you kill one more and eat them, and then you wait again, or does it become this mechanism that, okay, we need to do this organized in a way that we have a good food supply. We'll bring people in. We'll see if they're amicable to our lifestyle, and if they are, they can join us, and if not, then they become food. And if you really sort of step back and look at it, it in a very twisted way makes a lot of sense for survival purposes, not for sort of everyday purposes.
But what about the Governor Rick's group? They don't eat people, and they're in kind of the same environment. They still survive, right? It's purely survival.
Well, what would have happened when the food started running out?
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, to that extreme. Yep.
all right. Let's get back to back to.
Oh yeah, I want to ask. Let's go back to Abraham's character maybe and talk about his relationship with Eugene here. What do you think, Mike?
They're cute.
Fidel Sassoon.
Exactly.
Well, we can get
A good hairstylist in an apocalypse, I'll tell you that.
let's get a little closer look here.
You can't leave. Why? I have a very important mission.
And one more here.
Alive? I'm a scientist. I don't know how to stop it. I'm a scientist. I am smarter than you. You may want to leave her here.
Hey! Come on! Get off
Yeah, don't piss him off today.
But he's smarter than me.
We'll just let you go ahead and talk about this.
It's that sums up the whole relationship. Those two scenes. He came to him. He gave him. I'm hunched over this thing. Can you hear me here?
No.
Okay. So I'll be over here. He has nothing left to live for. He is basically not just in the specifics of day to day, but he is missionless in his life. His family is gone, his friends are gone, everything he had or has is gone and has been killed either by his own hands or by walkers. The last 2 years has been spent on this mission that turns out to be a lie. Everything he's been living for, he's been told, is a complete lie. Not only the people that died, but the people that Abraham killed, who got in the way of the mission, who may not have been killed had there not been such an important mission. So there's a lot weighing on all of this. When he gets to the point where if he wasn't stopped by Rosita in the end, they didn't show that part, he would have killed him at that point, in that moment of rage. But once again, looking back, he saved his life. So we had the scene last, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen them. There's a scene where they sort of reconcile, or at least open the door to the beginnings of that. And we see that for whatever reasons, because this shared experience, this horrific experience the last 2 years, they bonded in a way that I don't think even Abraham understands. But in a strange way, they need each other still, even after the mission. So we'll see, what that evolves into, because I don't think Abraham does know what that's all about. I know that he feels, in retrospect, after having some distance from the event, he feels horrible that basically he tried to kill somebody, or was going to kill somebody in his family. But he's also smart enough to realize that he is the reason why they are in Alexandria, because through this series of crazy events that got them there, he's part of it. Everything that happened is a part of it. Everything had to happen exactly the way it happened, or they wouldn't be where they are. So I don't know. We'll see where that takes us. It's kind of awesome.
Let's say, we're going to ask you a question here. Let's say you don't have a mission at the moment. You meet these three people. Who would be the leader that you would follow?
It'd still be Rick.
Yeah.
He's very clear about what he wants. He's willing to fight and die for what he believes in. And no one else has that clear of a sort of mission statement at this point. Now, we had talked about some of this stuff prior. If you think about Deanna, who's Deanna? Deanna is, why did she bring us there? Because she did, she brought us there. And we are everything that they are lacking. So I think as things unfold, we're going to realize that there's a lot more going on. And this is not me, this is me guessing. I've been a fan of the show prior, but I would say that she knows very specifically and very clearly who we are. She said to, I forgot Aiden's partner, when she was interviewing him, he was telling her that bullshit about Glenn. She says, I'm taping everything, I'm listening to everything, and I see everything. She knows a lot more than she's let on to at this point. So she knows who we are. So ultimately, I don't know, but right now, absolutely Rick.
Eric, what about the governor? What do you think about him?
So the governor actually shows some psychopathic traits. So this is not a diagnosis. This is not a diagnosis. We don't say, hey, psychopath, in terms of coding for insurance. This is a collection of personality traits. People are remorseless. They don't care. They literally have no empathy for others, and they'll do whatever they need to use people as pawns in their chess game to get what they need. And deceitful. This is all part of the governor's game. Maybe it's part of Deanna's game. We'll have to find out. Who knows? That's what I think for me, and I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
No, part of psychopathy is narcissism, right? The self-centeredness. So you see that a lot with the governor when we've gotten asked questions about who's the psychopath. narcissistic traits are basically, we've all heard about them, being self-centered, thinking you're full of yourself basically, and you want to be admired. So one question we've gotten is Rick a psychopath or a narcissist then, right? Like he does some things. He does some things.
He's just misunderstood.
Right. Well, he's a sheriff, but he's no Boy Scout, right? He's gotten his hands bloody before. He's taken down the people at Terminus. He attacks Pete. Sorry, spoiler if people haven't seen that one. So is he one of these things? Well, not necessarily. Michael was talking about the why is what's important here. Rick has a set of rules that he's trying to follow to get his group to safety. And to me, the whole situation with Alexandria really showed, can you have civilization like how we all live in this world, and will that work, versus how Rick and his group has evolved, to survive, and the clash between those two things. That's what I think.
He really doesn't. Yeah, he really shows he does have other ideas, other motivations for good. And then he's also Rick Grimes. So. Let's hear what he has to say, actually, in a little bit. But for me, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah. So, one question that was interesting for us that if you guys haven't seen the Walking Dead magazine article we were asked to write one about leadership styles, and some of the leaders were the ones in the comics. But one question we were asked was, why do people follow these different leaders, and what's different about their styles? Well, Rick is somebody that in the real world people would call a transformational leader. So it's not just about, okay, this person provides me shelter and that's a transaction. It's like this guy actually tries to better all of us together. So together we can, get love, self-esteem, actualize our dreams, that sort of stuff. Get to a better frontier. So that's kind of what Rick does. So other things that happen in the real world in terms of people following stuff is what we call group polarization. So if you put a group of people together, they will do weird stuff in our world. So who knows what they'll do in The Walking Dead. You're put in a group and there's extreme ideas in the group, you'll start believing the extreme ideas in the group and kind of aligning yourself that way.
Has anyone here ever done jury duty? It's like a perfect example, because y'all listen to this same stuff for 6 or 7 days, and you're pretty sure you're all on the same page until you start talking about it, and you realize you're in a room with crazy people.
If any of you guys have taken social psychology class in college, you remember those Stanford prison experiments, and then just think about a mob. You just blend in and do all kinds of stuff. But one concept is cognitive dissonance. So if you have a good value of somebody, let's say Rick, and then he does something that really makes you feel uncomfortable, your mind will justify it, you'll rationalize it. And so I think that's why a lot of people follow these folks here.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear what he has to say, and then we want to pretty quickly get it over to you guys.
Your way of doing things is done. Things don't get better because you want them to. Starting right now, we have to live in the real world. Your ways gonna destroy this place. It's gonna get people killed. It's already got people killed. And I'm not gonna stand by and just let it happen. If you don't fight, you die. I'm not gonna stand by and...
We edited those clips for your viewing pleasure, so...
You still following?
Yeah, I don't know why she cut him off. I was you don't do this, you die. You don't do that, you die. You're going to lose this place. Things out there are bad. She hits him? I'm with him the whole way. I mean, he's covered in blood and he looks like a lunatic. But what he's saying is all correct. Yeah, I still follow him.
Yeah, I'm glad you do. This is the new normal. This really is the new normal. So let's turn it over to you guys in terms of questions and answers, and we'll go from there. All right. So let's figure out how to do this. Start with the red mask.
So what, in your opinion, is the leadership quality lacking in the group at this moment?
Leadership quality lacking in the group.
Yeah.
Are you asking Michael or all of us?
All of you, just personally.
I don't think there's any. I don't think anything's lacking. Actually, I mean, I think there's very different styles, but I think there's rules on for everybody. Yeah, I think it's all being rewritten or written for the first time. So the needs of the community change every single day, moment to moment. So I don't think anything is lacking, really.
One thing that's interesting is the hallmark of maybe a good leader here, Rick, is the different players in his group will bring out things, and he actually considers it, right? He changes, even when he was talking to Carl, when he's talking to Michonne, all that sort of stuff. So he's not like that would be one argument against him being a pure narcissist, right? So I think that's really what's adaptable.
And I would say that's something that they've shown more and more, is that the group is having an effect on him. The last 3 episodes, you actually saw people turning on him so far as his opinion, actual confrontation, saying, no, I think you're wrong, and having discussions. I think Glenn has been, awesome, talking to him about things and saying, reminding him of the humanity buried in Rick's mission. And I think he's open to that, especially now. I think he sees this place as the future for this moment in time. So much so that it is about this place. It's like what you have here, you will lose what you have here. And you said a few episodes ago, if these people can't, basically get their shit together, we'll take this place. So it's all about this place right now, because it is a safe place, even though it has some design flaws that he's pointed out in keeping them safe. This is definitely a place that has more potential than, say, the prison for future growth.
I think. That's fine. I was thinking.
No, it's fine. Let's see. Here in the hat.
It was an interesting thing when Deanne was interviewing Glenn. I think the most important thing Glenn said is, I think we're back in, but the thing is, we were there, just got off the road just in time. Now this is a combat crew basically thrown back into civilization, and they're supposed to act normally, so PTSD with everybody, but with a different degree. It's impacting everybody differently. We'll see how that comes out.
Yep. All right. And glasses there.
My question is, with what you know now from doing the show and such, do you think that if this actually happened, A, you would survive? And if you did,
Yes.
what is the one thing that you learned going through this experience on the show that you would take with you in order to survive?
You mean Michael or Abraham?
I've learned that right now, because I'm working, I'm only able to go to my favorite bar on Saturday nights. And I'd probably go there a lot more. I don't know. I think that personally, I don't know how I would do. I don't know how I would react in that actual kind of stress. And I would argue most people don't know. And the only reason I would say this is because I've been very fortunate over the years to portray a lot of men in the service. And one of the common things that you hear from officers and firemen and soldiers is that all the training in the world doesn't mean anything, because when the shit hits the fan, you are surprised at who falls apart and who seems to not have their act together at all, who pulls it all together and runs straight into the gunfire. So I would say I don't know, and I would hope that I would do well. I've been told that Norman Reedus has a pretty good plan. He hasn't shared it with me, but he said he has his plan, so I would probably stick with him. We're going to work on the crossbow, not a highly effective weapon in a zombie apocalypse, but we'll give him that. But he's got a plan, so I'm sticking with him.
The gentleman in the glasses there.
In a hypothetical situation, if Rick
were to die, how would the group react? Would they naturally go, okay, well naturally this person is going to be our new leader, or will there be more of a power struggle amongst the group?
I think leaders emerge. I don't think necessarily in these types of situations leaders are chosen. I think in peacetime, leaders are chosen. I think in wartime and chaos, leaders emerge.
And who do you think would be most likely to emerge?
I think there'd be a bunch of candidates, a bunch in our group, which is why I think our group is so dangerous right now.
Right, in the back.
How long do I want?
How long do you think the group will last before everything crumbles?
Hopefully a lot more seasons.
Well, we have a pretty good history of staying in one place for a really long period of time before things go bad, right? What could possibly go wrong? Guys walking around with W's carved into their heads, elaborate booby traps just 50 miles away. People being sacrificed, naked women being tied to trees, kids hopping over fences with guns. Sounds pretty good to me.
There in the glove, go ahead.
First off, Michael, congratulations on having arguably the best lines in the show.
Yes, thank you.
The actual real doctors. We've seen a couple of people.
Hey, I don't like
sure.
his quotes.
We've seen a couple of people have like episodes recently, most notably Rick and Sasha. Based on what you've seen of the characters, who do you think is sort of next to break?
I missed the first part. You said episodes of what?
Well, just sort of like they've sort of not kept their cool. Like sort of just lost it a little bit even within the context of the apocalypse.
Sure, so we're being asked about episodes characters have had where they seem to have, to use your word, lost their cool or just not seem there. And who would we think would be next? I think, just to comment, you brought up a couple of characters, Sasha and Rick. There was an episode where Sasha was at the home in Alexandria at the party, and people were saying, oh, we want to cook you a meal, we want to make sure it's not one you hate. She was getting very upset and having some flashbacks to incidents she experienced. That probably is a PTSD episode. Mm-hmm. In terms of who would have an attack next, I mean, as Michael said, everybody's been through tons of stuff.
Just to add on to what you're saying on that, it's and we were talking about this earlier, when you're in the middle of it, you don't have time to think, and actually sometimes that's your friend. It's when you have, now it's safe, if it really is, now you've got time to think, and now you don't fit in anymore. And that's, I think, that's how I kind of see Sasha, what's going on with her is this really real here? And she's gotten so used to adapt to your environment, it's hard to sit around talking about tea cakes and whatever else they're talking about.
And I think your point, though, I don't know who would, because they've all been through such trauma, but I will say that the research shows that interpersonal trauma, so rape or interpersonal violence, seeing dead people, this is all what can cause PTSD. Those are the most frequent causes. Well, everybody's been through this interpersonal violence and seeing that, so anybody's a candidate, really.
In real life, there's kind of like a concept of risk, vulnerability factors, and then resiliency. So a lot of like the research and stuff now, when we try to help kids and whatnot, is on resiliency. So you may have the same trauma. Everybody's out there seeing zombies coming after you. You're seeing your loved ones die, but not everyone reacts in this way. And so there's certain things that can bolster you. If you got a group, you've got support. Actually, high IQ, believe it or not, a sense of humor. I don't know how you laugh about it.
You have an Abraham.
Yeah.
So, but one other piece about PTSD is only about 10% of people will develop full-blown PTSD. So you can have post-traumatic symptoms, but not necessarily have the full diagnosis or full criteria to meet the diagnosis of PTSD. Even if you don't have that full diagnosis, we still treat people with these problems and want to make sure they get the help they need. So in this case, it could be anybody. Michael, I don't know if you have anything to add on that. Who you would think would crumble?
No, it could be anyone.
All right.
Father Gabriel.
Oh, that's yes.
Everyone's favorite priest.
Yeah, with the hat. Hey.
I think Abraham does what has to be done. I think he's most comfortable in a subordinate role, doing a portion of, executing a specific mission. He's a non-commissioned officer. He's not usually the guy who comes up with the big plan. He's given a certain portion of the plan, he's told to execute it, and he will execute the shit out of it. But then he'll come back and get another portion of the plan. We'll see, though, if he's ever tasked to raise, and just saying that, I'm calling myself a liar, because obviously I just took over the construction crew. So, I don't know. Next question. No. No, I don't know. It's interesting. My answer had always been what I had said first, and then I realized he has, in a way, stepped up to be his own leader. But it still has its place within the bigger picture of Alexandria.
So in social psych, right, this is basically saying you join someone that will help you do your mission, right? So if you see two groups, they will sometimes join together if they have the same goal or a goal that's overlapping. They just call it superordinate goals. But that's kind of how I saw Abraham. He joined Rick's group because, hey, these guys can potentially help me get Eugene to Washington, and then that crumbled.
Okay, it's gentleman here.
I just want to say hi, Michael. I saw you at Walker StarterCon in San Francisco.
Was I nice?
My question to everybody, someone like Judith growing up in this kind of world, into an adult, what kind of mentality do you think she would have growing up if this keeps going on?
Questions, Judith, growing up in this world, what kind of mentality would she have
As an adult.
as an adult?
That's, I think, that's a really good question, and it's the other question is Carl too, right? He started, but then he developed. So, a lot of this stuff is really based on what you experience, your development, the group around you. So, a lot of her story is not written yet. So, I think there's just too many variables to predict. It would be like, let's say you had a baby, it's like, hey, how is this baby going to turn out? You forensic psychiatrist. Well, the answer I can't tell you right now. There's so many variables. So, if she's going to survive, she's probably going to have to adopt values that Rick is talking about in terms of survival, unless something changes in the circumstances.
I think she'll be
Little
most
asking.
well equipped. We're typically asked what character would we like to be if we were not the character we're portraying, and I half jokingly always say Baby Judith because she doesn't know any different. She's being protected, she's being fed, she has no idea that there's danger because that's literally what she's growing up with. I personally think she will be the most well-adjusted with dealing with this world, but she will have a problem with the people who were not as young as her when all this went down. Like when she gets older, the people who are sort of, in their 20s now, and their 40s then won't really understand how she thinks and processes everything because she's gonna grow up in a world where basically the walkers are rattlesnakes to her. It's just this thing out there that can kill you, so you have to be careful of it. I think she's gonna have a completely different mindset than anyone else.
Okay, in the gray there.
Based on your character having forms of PTSD, how do you prepare yourself as an actor portraying that and accurately portraying that?
That's a tough question. No, because that's a question that gets into, and I don't want this to make you feel bad, but that gets into like my work, and then I always it becomes very convoluted when I talk about it, and it's hard to talk about. And it's, as you can see right now, I'm at a loss for words, and I'm someone who is usually not at a loss for words. It's hard. You just have to sort of put yourself in that situation. Everything that I do falls back onto research and comes from there. The rest is just is actor stuff, and it's not really that fascinating. I'm sorry?
Does any of it rub off on you a little?
I think you take some of it home with you at night, but you shake it off. I mean, it's probably why I'm not seeing these guys like 2 times a week in real life. Because I get to act out all these things. It's the stuff that you do. I mean, we all did it when we were little kids. We all had it in us when you wanted something and you could, get emotional at the drop of a hat to show your parents what you wanted, but we lose it. It gets beaten out of us by this society we live in. So we all had it. It's just, in a lot of ways, the most traumatic stuff that you guys watch us do is we have the most fun doing that, which is a weird thing to say. But the flashback stuff, that was like the best week of my life on The Walking Dead. It was fantastic. And killing all the walkers on the construction site and going berserk, and those are good days.
Here with the mustache.
How would you guys diagnose Carol?
Carol? From the show or the comic?
Well, we're talking about the show. Let's stick with this show.
Well, I don't know if I would say there's a diagnosis exactly. So that was the whole point earlier about what we're talking about. Some of these things are adaptation, and even in our world, we have to look at the culture, right? If your reaction is culturally, what they call culturally sanctioned, culturally approved, it's not, it automatically will disqualify it as a disorder in our world. So that's the first thing I'd say. We got to look at our society. So even to see if what she's doing is out there culturally. Now, if you were saying, well, how do you understand some of the behaviors here, or what would you see the path? I don't know if I would have that much more insight than Michael in this, but I see somebody who inside really was a stronger person, but didn't have it initially. You saw the kind of battered wife situation, and I think the way it was written, it really drew out those character dimensions of her. And now it's almost like, how far is she going to go? If you guys saw the last few episodes, she's threatening kids, right? Before she was
but she's right. I mean, you look at all the things that society, and this is touching on what you guys do, I guess, in a way, but all of the reasons why people stay in battered situations. People aren't going to believe me. People are going to judge me. All the reasons why people don't tell people that they're raped, they're going to have this opinion. What if all the other rules about those things were gone, and you could be the person you wanted to be? Okay, well, in Carol's case, her abusive husband is killed, and no one is judging her for it. She gets to move forward from that. It's interesting how how some of the societal things, some of the norms and the way things are actually keep you down in certain ways. I think she's able to be the fully realized, awesome Carol she always was. She's definitely somebody who I would even talking about leaders who would be a great leader for the group, because she's willing to do whatever needs to be done. And very few people are equipped to do that. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And the person you asked about comics versus show, we stuck today with the TV show. The comics, Carol is depicted differently, and we would diagnose her with different things in the comic, and in our articles we have talked about her that way, but just wanted to acknowledge we're talking about the show. So, next question. Let's see, woman in the back of the gray.
Best reality TV show?
For his character?
It'd have to be Cooking with Sarge. The what?
Existing reality.
Maybe reality.
Yeah. Existing. I gotta think of one of those cooking show names.
King of the Stars.
No, Iron Chef. Yeah, exactly. Okay, and what would be the worst? It's probably Survivor, because you just kill everybody in his group. Like, you don't know nothing.
Right. Gentleman standing up there in the gray, raise your hand. Oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, after this question, we totally have 5 minutes. We'll go to the front here on the right.
From what I understand, it's a different time. So, okay, we'll see. Things could have shifted, though. I mean, there's people who we came in contact with, or who our group came in contact with, that weren't dead but left the show. There's the Vatos, those guys are all still floating around. You don't know, somebody could have left that world before they came to our world, so we could see them pre our world, I guess, which would be kind of cool for the audience. But I don't know how they're dealing with it, because even though it's pre, it has started, and the timeline with Rick being unconscious is pretty tight. So, I don't know, there's some cool things that they'd have to get around, but I think that would be worth it.
Okay, here in the front, right?
So, as the audience, we go through everything that you guys go through, beat for beat on the show. And it seems as though you guys have just tremendous losses and little wins, but those little wins seem incredible, like, when you're watching it. Is that what it's like for you guys there?
Yeah, it's hope. There's always a glimmer of hope, no matter how horrible, no matter the amount of losses, no matter how tragic the loss, that little bit of hope. And I would argue that is what keeps everybody moving forward. And when people lose all hope, I think that's when horrible things happen to them. But I do think that the smallest glimmer of hope can pull you through in real life. I'm not just talking about the show. I think that the smallest glimmer can really pull you through anything and keep you moving forward.
There.
This isn't as serious of a question, but my friend was wondering, referring to the show, if you want to be Dolphin Smooth.
I am Dolphin Smooth.
Next question. Over there.
I know, I'm invisible.
Okay. How could Lizzie have such serial killer tendencies? Were your words, I think. Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm quoting you correctly. Praveen, you want to?
Well, first off, I guess it's a controversial concept about juvenile psychopathy, if you can see it in kids, but sometimes you see behaviors, like if you guys have ever seen that remake of Halloween, where you see like the beginnings and stuff, cruelty to animals, all that sort of stuff, sometimes can predict later bad stuff, bad things. And you see in families, you don't have like 3 people becoming a serial killer. If you do, that'd be a scary family. So, there's different possible causes of psychopathy. We don't know everything, but certain people have losses in a certain way. Certain people, it's just their brain is different. They just don't register empathy the same way. It's like, there's prey and predators. That's how I look at it. There's sometimes the predator in the environment is the thing that we might need to move society forward. Here, maybe she had to do this, or maybe certain people had to do what would look like psychopathic behaviors, like Rick, to move forward, to survive. I know that's a little off your question a little bit, but back to your question is just that it really depends. It's just different things, different genetics, different circumstances, life experiences, and people will develop differently there.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. Gentleman in t-shirt, black there.
This better be good.
Question for all of you guys. Based on society, that's the new norm. Fast forward 15, 20 years. Do you feel that society can come back and be back to the old norm? And how will the kids that grew up in it react when it's no longer the new norm and they got to go back to being the normal society?
Did you come to our Monsters panel a couple of years, was it 2 years ago, Eric? We actually had that issue right there. Well, assuming it goes back to reality, I think it'd be really difficult. If the people who survived in this world, they had to change to survive. And to change back to another society, I think you're going to have all those problems Michael was talking about with men and women in service. Amplify that with a zombie apocalypse, and now they have to come back to reality. Talk about job security as a psychiatrist. We would be in good shape right there.
Michael, last word, and then
I would just say, I think you saw already that it's not going to return with the last image in our show, or the second to the last image in our show. Michonne puts the sword back on her back. This sword's not ever being hung up again.
We want to thank you all, and again, if you want to read more about what we do, The Walking Dead, the official magazine, there are a few articles there. Thank you.